You will need 2 or more scraps of fabric, both the same size. A piece of thin fusible interfacing, this is optional, but makes it much easier to finish your piece. As far as tools go, you will need a roller cutter and a sewing machine, with the ability to satin stitch or zigzag. Although you do only need 2 pieces of fabric, it is important to know that they need to be the same size and shape. Rectangles are easiest. The fabric you create will also be the same size. If you prefer, you can use more than 2 pieces of fabric, that is the subject of another video. Basically, all you would do is join the 2 smaller fabrics together to make the same sized piece as the third and largest fabric piece. Then continue as shown in this video. Iron the first fabric piece so there are no creases or wrinkles in the fabric and place it on a cutting board. Using the roller cutter, cut the fabric into strips at least 1 inch or 2.5 centimeters wide. The example you saw at the beginning of this video has strips roughly 2 inches or 5 centimeters wide. Very narrow strips take a lot of sewing and care. As you are cutting the fabric, create some curves. This will give the finished work some distinction and it will not become boring and predictable. Each of the squares, for want of a better word, will be a different size and shape. You can't cut the fabric wrong, as long as all the strips are cut in the same direction. Now for the second piece. Iron the second fabric piece. Place the second fabric piece on the cutting board, away from the first. We are now going to cut this fabric into strips, much the same as the first, but in the opposite direction. These strips will then be woven through the first set. Once again, feel free to cut curves. The cuts do not need to be straight lines. Accuracy here is really not important. Once finished, leave all the pieces on the cutting board as they are. Transfer the strips keeping the same order, on top of the interfacing. Pin one end of the strips to the interfacing. If necessary, trim off any interfacing that extends past the fabric strips. Now the fun part, when you can start to see the results of your labor. Take the first of the second set of strips and weave it over and under the first set, making sure that the edge of the strip is pushed high into the first set of fabric strips. The strips are woven between the first fabric and the interfacing, if you are using it. You may need to remove some, or all of the pins to make this easy. Then take the second strip and weave this through the first set too. This time, take it under and over the first set of strips to make a checkerboard pattern. Push the second strip as close as possible to the first. Continue in this way until all of the second set of strips have been woven into the first. Because you started with 2 pieces of fabric the same size, you should end up with that same size once every piece has been woven in. If necessary, trim excess interfacing front around the woven fabric. This will prevent it sticking to your iron. If you are using the interfacing, which honestly, does make the final step much easier and makes your new fabric far more robust. Use a hot iron, carefully press the fabric strips onto the interfacing, making sure you do not disturb the lie of the fabric strips. You will need to remove the pins. If you are not using interfacing, pin each piece in place, taking as much care as you can, to retain the positions of the strips. Now you have a fabric that is almost complete. Okay, so now we come to the final part of our design, the sewing. Using a satin stitch or closed zigzag, sew the edges of the fabric together. Complete each seam in one direction first, then turn the fabric and sew in the other direction. Having ironed the strips onto fusible interfacing will help this step, as the fabric pieces are reasonably stable and tend not to move. Consider using a contrasting thread to give more personality to your fabric. We hope your fabric is just super. We find this is a very satisfying method of manipulating fabric. You can use it for all sorts of purposes, bags, vests, hats, whatever. You can team the new fabric with other purchased fabric for great effect. Remember that this same method can be used to create any number of different styles of fabric, just like this other sample. Use your imagination and your stash of fabric scraps to make any number of interesting pieces of fabric. Thanks for watching our video. There are more ideas for crafty projects over at our website, www.artsandcraftsdownunder.com, so please head over there. We'd love to see your projects too, so please post your take on our ideas and leave your comments. Take care. And, happy crafting from the team at ACDU.